My name is Hope Anderson, and at 68 years old, I never imagined spending Mother's Day alone crying in my car outside my son Michael's house. After raising him alone when his father died, I thought our bond was unbreakable. That morning, my daughter-in-law, Amanda, texted that my seat at the table was canceled. Through the open window, I heard her tell my son, "The real gift will be when that witch ends up in a nursing home." They had no idea I was there or that I held the papers to their mortgage. If you're watching this and have ever felt betrayed by family, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to join me on this journey of standing up for yourself. I became a single mother when Michael was only 7 years old. His father, James, died suddenly from a heart attack, leaving us with minimal savings and a mountain of medical bills. We had been high school sweethearts, married for 10 wonderful years before tragedy struck. Those first months without him were the darkest of my life, but Michael needed me, so I found strength I never knew I possessed. I took on 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I worked as a receptionist at a local dental office, and 3 evenings a week, I cleaned office buildings. Michael would often accompany me to the night job, doing homework at empty desks while I vacuumed around him. I still remember his little face so serious as he worked on multiplication tables, occasionally looking up to give me an encouraging smile. We lived modestly in a small, 2-bedroom apartment. I put aside my dreams of going back to college, focusing instead on providing stability for my son. Every dollar saved went toward his college fund. I wanted to make sure he had opportunities I never had. Despite our financial struggles, those years built a special bond between us. Every Sunday was our special day. No matter how tired I was, we would make pancakes together in the morning, then go to the park or library in the afternoon. Michael would tell me about his week at school, his friends, and his dreams of becoming an architect someday. And he did achieve that dream. Through scholarships and my savings, Michael attended a prestigious university, graduating with honors in architecture. I had never been prouder than on his graduation day, watching him accept his diploma, knowing all our sacrifices had been worthwhile. He secured a position at a respected firm in our city, and our future looked bright. When Michael introduced me to Amanda during his final year of college, I was thrilled. She was studying business management, always well-dressed and articulate. She seemed to make my son happy, and that was all that mattered to me. "Mom, this is Amanda," Michael had said, his eyes shining with obvious affection. "The most amazing woman I've ever met." I welcomed her with open arms, eager to know the woman who had captured my son's heart. Our early relationship seemed promising. We went shopping together, and I taught her some of Michael's favorite recipes. She asked questions about his childhood, seeming genuinely interested in our story. "You raised such a wonderful man," she told me once over coffee. "I admire how you managed everything on your own." Those words meant the world to me. I felt like I was gaining a daughter, not losing a son. When they announced their engagement, after dating for 2 years, I threw them an engagement party, inviting all our friends and family to celebrate. After their wedding, Michael and Amanda rented a small apartment while saving for a house. They found the perfect property about a year later, a beautiful 3-bedroom home with a yard in a good neighborhood. However, despite their good jobs, they struggled with the down payment in our expensive housing market. "We love this house," Mom, Michael confided during a Sunday visit, "but we might have to wait another year to save enough." Without hesitation, I offered to help. I had inherited some money when my sister passed away the previous year, and I had been saving diligently since James died. "I can contribute $80,000 toward your down payment," I told them. "Consider it an early inheritance and investment in your future." Amanda's eyes lit up, but I was careful to establish clear terms. Being a single mother had taught me the importance of financial responsibility. "This will be a formal loan," I explained, "with proper paperwork and monthly repayments. The interest will be minimal compared to what the bank would charge." Michael seemed uncomfortable mixing family and finance this way, but Amanda quickly agreed. "That's completely fair, Hope. We'll treat this professionally." The paperwork was drawn up by a lawyer friend of mine, establishing a 15-year repayment plan with reasonable interest. The monthly payments would come directly from their account to mine. This arrangement allowed them to purchase their dream home while giving me security for my retirement. Looking back, I should have noticed the early warning signs in Amanda's attitude. There were small comments that should have alerted me. "Your furniture is so vintage," she remarked during one of her visits to my home. "Have you ever thought about updating your style?" When I brought homemade dishes to their house, she would sometimes remark, "This is good, but have you tried making it with less salt? Michael needs to watch his blood pressure." At family gatherings, she would subtly correct my stories about Michael's childhood. "I think you're misremembering Hope. Michael told me it happened differently." But I dismissed these moments, attributing them to the natural adjustment period of blending families. I was so excited about our family growing that I overlooked these red flags. After they moved into their new home, I noticed Michael calling less frequently. Our weekly Sunday brunches became monthly, then sporadic. When I would suggest getting together, there was always some reason they couldn't make it. "Amanda has a work event," or "We promised her parents we'd visit them this weekend." I tried to maintain our closeness, sending thoughtful text messages and suggesting lunch dates with just Michael. Sometimes he would agree, but often cancel at the last minute. I began to realize that my son was slipping away, his decisions increasingly influenced by Amanda's preferences. But I held on to hope that our relationship would find a new balance, never imagining how much worse things would become. After Michael and Amanda had been married for about 2 years, I noticed a definite pattern forming. Amanda's behavior toward me worsened steadily after they settled into their new home, the one I had helped them purchase. What started as subtle comments evolved into more obvious exclusion. The first major holiday after they moved in, I expected an invitation for Thanksgiving dinner. Michael and I had always spent holidays together, even after he moved out for college. When no invitation came by mid-November, I called him. "Oh, Amanda thought it would be nice to host her family this year since we have the new house," he explained awkwardly. "Her parents, sisters, and their husbands are coming. The dining room is pretty small, so we're already at capacity." I swallowed my disappointment. "I understand. Maybe we can celebrate together the weekend after." "Of course, Mom. That sounds great." But that makeup celebration never materialized. There was always some excuse when I brought it up. For Christmas that year, I was included, but felt like an outsider. Amanda had decorated their home elaborately with a color-coordinated tree and matching wrapping paper for all the gifts beneath it. When I arrived with my presents wrapped in the paper I had chosen, Amanda quickly took them and placed them on a side table away from the main display. "These don't quite match our theme," she explained with a tight smile, "but it's the thought that counts, right?" When Michael opened the sweater I had carefully selected for him, Amanda frowned. "Blue isn't really your color, honey," she commented, though Michael had always worn blue, and wool makes you itch. Remember? Michael had never mentioned a wool allergy to me in all his 29 years. I tried to connect with Amanda through cooking, knowing she enjoyed entertaining. I offered family recipes and suggestions for holiday meals. "Your generation cooked differently," she would say dismissively. "People are more health conscious now. All that butter and cream isn't good for anyone." When I brought dishes to their gatherings, they were often left largely untouched or placed away from the main spread. Despite these disappointments, a bright spot appeared in our family. Amanda became pregnant about 3 years into their marriage. I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. Surely this would bring us closer together. "A baby girl," Michael announced over the phone. "You're going to be a grandmother, Mom." I immediately began knitting blankets and buying books to read to my future granddaughter. I offered to help prepare the nursery and attend birthing classes as a support person. "Amanda's mother will be her birthing partner," Michael informed me, "and they've already hired a designer for the nursery, but thanks for offering." When little Lily was born, I rushed to the hospital with gifts and overwhelming love for this tiny new person. Amanda was polite but distant, allowing me only a brief hold of my granddaughter before claiming the baby needed to rest. "We're limiting visitors to 20 minutes, she said firmly. "Doctor's orders." Yet when I left, I noticed her parents settling in for what appeared to be a much longer stay. In the months that followed, I tried to establish a grandmother routine. I offered to babysit to give the new parents a break. We have a very specific schedule for Lily, Amanda would explain. It would be confusing to have different caregivers at this stage. When I did get to visit, it was always under supervised conditions, never alone with my granddaughter. Amanda would hover nearby quick to correct my holding technique or feeding position. Babies today aren't held the same way you might have held Michael, she would say. There's new research about neck support. Michael witnessed these interactions, but never intervened. He had become increasingly passive in Amanda's presence, deferring to her on all matters related to their home and child. The confident, independent son I had raised seemed to disappear when his wife entered the room. Then came the first truly heartbreaking incident. Lily's first birthday should have been a milestone celebration for our family. I had marked the date on my calendar, months in advance, purchased an age-appropriate gift, and even taken a cake decorating class to make something special for the occasion. The week before the birthday, I called to confirm the details. Lily's birthday. That's this Saturday at 2, Michael said, sounding confused. I thought Mom told you. Told me what? We're keeping it very small, just Amanda's family since they haven't seen Lily in a few months. Her cousin has kids the same age, so it'll be good for Lily's social development. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. But Michael, I'm her grandmother. How could you not include me in her first birthday? There was a long pause before he responded. Amanda thought it might be overwhelming for Lily to have too many people. We can do something with you the next day. I couldn't hold back my tears. Michael, this isn't right. I've barely been allowed to build a relationship with Lily as it is. Now I'm being excluded from important milestones. Mom, please don't make this difficult. Amanda is under a lot of stress with work and being a mother. The last thing she needs is family drama. This isn't drama, Michael. This is about respect and family bonds. After much negotiation, I was allowed a brief visit the morning of Lily's birthday before the actual party. I arrived with my carefully wrapped gifts and homemade cake, only to find Amanda's mother already there helping with decorations. I was given exactly 45 minutes with my granddaughter, during which Amanda busied herself in another room, clearly waiting for me to leave before the real celebration began. As I was preparing to leave, I noticed beautiful professional photographs of Lily, with Amanda's parents prominently displayed throughout the house. There wasn't a single photo of me with my granddaughter. In the car, I finally broke down. The Michael I knew would never have treated me this way. He had always been thoughtful and inclusive, values I had worked hard to instill in him. Now he was complicit in my exclusion from his family. That evening, I called and asked him to meet me for coffee the next day alone. To my surprise, he agreed. I need you to understand how hurtful today was. I told him at the cafe, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been pushed to the margins of Lily's life, and you've allowed it to happen. Michael stared into his coffee cup, avoiding my eyes. Amanda has strong opinions about how to raise Lily and manage our family relationships. She doesn't mean to hurt you. Intent doesn't change the impact, Michael. I raised you as a single mother. I made countless sacrifices to give you a good life, and now I'm treated like an inconvenient acquaintance rather than family. That's not fair, Mom. We're just trying to establish our own family traditions. Amanda feels it's important that Lily has consistency. And I can't provide that I'm somehow disruptive to her development. Michael sighed heavily. It's complicated. Amanda had a difficult relationship with her own grandmother, who was critical of her mother. She's sensitive about interference. Have I ever interfered or criticized Amanda's parenting? No, but she feels observed sometimes. I reached for his hand across the table. Michael, I'm losing my connection to you and my only grandchild. Is that what you want? For a moment, I saw a glimpse of my son, a flash of recognition in his eyes. No, of course not. I'll talk to Amanda. We'll make things better, I promise. I wanted desperately to believe him. But as I watched him walk away, I had a sinking feeling that things would only get worse. Still, I held on to hope for my granddaughter's sake. I would endure whatever I needed to maintain even the smallest presence in Lily's life. The year following Lily's first birthday brought even more calculated distance and exclusion. Amanda's manipulations became increasingly obvious and painful. Our family dynamic deteriorated from uncomfortable to unbearable. Every attempt I made to connect with my granddaughter was met with an elaborate system of obstacles. If I suggested visiting on a Saturday, Amanda would inform me that Saturdays were reserved for immediate family activities. When I proposed a Sunday instead, suddenly they had standing brunch plans with Amanda's college friends. Weekday evenings were apparently sacred for their family dinner routine. "Maybe next month will be better," became Michael's standard response to my invitations. "Amanda has everything scheduled pretty tightly right now." When I did manage to secure a visit, it was often canceled at the last minute. "Lily has a slight sniffle," Amanda would text an hour before I was due to arrive. "Better not risk exposing her to more germs." Or Michael got called into an unexpected client meeting. "We'll have to reschedule." These last-minute cancellations happened frequently enough that I began to wonder if they were ever intended to follow through. I started keeping a small journal of these instances, not out of pettiness but to assure myself I wasn't imagining the pattern. My isolation from Michael's family became so complete that I learned about their vacation to Disney World through a mutual friend who had seen Amanda's social media posts. "I thought you'd be with them," my friend Jennifer commented during our monthly lunch. "Isn't this Lily's first big vacation?" I forced a smile and changed the subject, unwilling to admit that I hadn't even known they were planning a trip. During this period, I experienced a health scare that should have brought my family closer. A routine mammogram revealed a concerning mass requiring a biopsy. While waiting for results, I called Michael, needing my son's support during this frightening time. "I'm having a medical procedure tomorrow," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "The doctor found something during my mammogram." "What kind of something?" Michael asked, sounding distracted. "They're not sure yet. That's why they're doing the biopsy. I'm a little scared, to be honest." I heard Amanda's voice in the background, followed by Michael's muffled response before he returned to our call. "I'm sure it's nothing serious, Mom. Try not to worry. Let me know what the doctor says." "I was hoping maybe you could come with me to the appointment," I ventured. "It would help to have someone there." There was an uncomfortable pause. "Tomorrow's not good. Amanda's parents are visiting and we have plans. Can't Jennifer go with you? You two are close, right?" The biopsy results ultimately came back benign, thank goodness, but Michael never followed up to ask about the outcome. When I called to share the good news, Amanda answered and said he was too busy to come to the phone but that she'd pass along the message. I never heard back from him about it. Around this time, I discovered something deeply hurtful. Through a conversation with my nephew, I learned that Amanda had been spreading falsehoods about me to our extended family. "Aunt Hope," he said hesitantly during a family reunion that Michael and Amanda had skipped. "Is it true that you've been refusing to follow Amanda's parenting guidelines when you're with Lily?" She told my mom. "That's why. They've had to limit your visits." I was stunned. That's absolutely untrue. I've never been allowed unsupervised time with Lily, and I've always respected their rules during my brief visits. My nephew looked uncomfortable. "She also mentioned something about you criticizing their financial decisions and threatening to take back the house if they don't parent according to your standards." This lie was particularly painful, given how scrupulously I had separated the financial arrangement from our family relationship. I had never once mentioned the loan during any disagreements. As these discoveries accumulated, Michael grew increasingly cold and distant. Our phone conversations, when they happened at all, became brief and superficial. He would call out of obligation on my birthday or major holidays, but the calls felt scripted, with Amanda often audibly present in the background. "How have you been, Mom?" he would ask, without really listening to my answer before launching into a recitation of Lily's latest accomplishments. My attempts to reconnect were met with polite indifference. I sent thoughtful emails about articles I thought might interest him or reminiscences about happy memories from his childhood. These were either acknowledged with one-word responses or ignored completely. Despite this heartbreaking treatment, I maintained the financial support I had committed to. The automatic monthly contribution toward their mortgage continued from my account, supplementing their own payments. I had promised to help them secure their home, and I wouldn't go back on my word even as they systematically excluded me from their lives. Then came a particularly painful sequence of events that should have opened my eyes completely. Lily had a dance recital at her preschool, a fact I only discovered through a Christmas card photo, showing her in a tutu, with a caption mentioning her performance. When I asked Michael about attending future recitals, he seemed caught off guard. "Oh, those are usually just for parents," he said dismissively. "The auditorium is tiny." Yet when I later spoke with another grandmother from Lily's class at a community event, she mentioned how lovely it was that the school made such an effort to include extended family at performances. "They even set up a special grandparents section," she said cheerfully. "Wasn't it adorable how they had the children make those special cards for us?" I had received no card, no invitation, no acknowledgement that this milestone had even occurred. More disturbing were Amanda's increasing demands for additional financial assistance despite their poor treatment of me. 6 years into our loan arrangement, Amanda approached me after a rare family dinner at their home. "Michael and I are thinking about finishing the basement to create a playroom for Lily," she said casually. "We were hoping you might consider increasing your monthly contribution to help cover the renovation costs. It would be an investment in your granddaughter's development." The audacity was breathtaking, but I was so desperate to maintain any connection to my family that I considered it. "I'll need to look at my budget," I said cautiously. "How much were you thinking?" "We got quotes around $20,000, Amanda replied. "If you could add about $300 to your monthly payment for the next few years, that would be perfect." Against my better judgment, and after consulting my financial advisor, I agreed to the increase. My thinking was painfully clear. Perhaps this additional generosity would open doors to more time with Lily. Perhaps Amanda would see my commitment to their family's well-being and soften her restrictions. I was wrong. The basement was finished, creating a beautiful play space that I was rarely allowed to visit. Amanda even had the nerve to complain about the quality of the workmanship during one of my visits, implying that my contribution hadn't been sufficient for the level of quality she deserved. Through a series of small incidents and larger betrayals, the pattern became undeniable. Amanda was systematically cutting me out of their lives, while continuing to benefit from my financial support. The woman who had once told me she admired how I had raised Michael now seemed determined to erase that history and replace it with her own narrative. What hurt most was watching my son become someone I barely recognized. The kind, considerate boy who had once written me Mother's Day cards promising to always take care of you like you took care of me now, couldn't even be bothered to return my phone calls. He had become a passive bystander to my exclusion, occasionally expressing mild regret but never taking action to change the situation. As Mother's Day approached that year, I tried to temper my expectations. The previous year's celebration had consisted of flowers delivered to my door with a card signed by all three of them, but clearly purchased and arranged by Michael alone. There had been no visit, no shared meal, no real acknowledgement of my role in creating our family. Still, I allowed myself a small measure of hope. Perhaps this year would be different. Perhaps Michael would remember how we used to celebrate when he was growing up with breakfast in bed and handmade cards. Perhaps at the very least I would get to spend some time with my granddaughter. How wrong I was! How completely devastatingly wrong! Mother's Day morning began with such promise. I woke early feeling a flutter of anticipation despite my efforts to manage my expectations. Michael had called the previous weekend, mentioning plans for a family dinner at their house. "Nothing fancy, Mom," he'd said. "Just the 4 of us around 5 o'clock on Sunday. Amanda's making her special lasagna." This simple invitation had meant the world to me. It would be the first holiday in over a year that I'd be included in a family celebration at their home. I spent the week looking forward to it, carefully selecting gifts that I hoped would please both Amanda and Lily. For Amanda, I'd chosen an elegant bracelet from a local artisan, knowing her preference for unique jewelry. For my precious granddaughter, now 4 years old, I had found a beautiful illustrated book about a grandmother and granddaughter gardening together, along with a child-sized gardening kit. Perhaps it might inspire Amanda to allow me to share this activity with Lily. I woke at 6 that morning, too excited to sleep late. I spent extra time on my appearance, selecting a lavender dress that Michael had once complimented, applying my makeup carefully, and styling my silver hair. I wanted to look my best for the family photos I hoped we might take. At 9:30, as I was putting the finishing touches on the gift wrapping, my phone chimed with a text message. Expecting perhaps a change in time or a request to bring something for dinner, I checked it immediately. The message was from Amanda, not Michael. "Hope we need to cancel your seat for dinner today. Lily has a school friend coming over with her mother instead. We'll drop off a card next week. Happy Mother's Day." I stared at the phone in disbelief. Cancelled, replaced by a school friend's mother. On Mother's Day, I read the message 3 times trying to make sense of it. There was no apology, no suggestion of rescheduling, just a cold dismissal. I called Michael immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. I texted him asking for an explanation, but received no response. In that moment, something broke inside me. After years of accepting last-minute cancellations and exclusions, this felt like the final straw. I made a decision that would alter our family dynamics forever. I would go to their house and confront them directly. No more hiding behind text messages and avoided calls. I gathered the gifts, got in my car, and drove the 20 minutes to their suburban home. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as a mixture of hurt, anger, and determination coursed through me. As I approached their neighborhood, I rehearsed what I would say. I would be calm but firm. I would express my pain without accusation. I would appeal to Michael's sense of decency and family loyalty. As I turned onto their street, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked in their driveway and along the curb. My stomach tightened. There appeared to be quite a gathering for a dinner that supposedly only included one of Lily's friends and her mother. Instead of pulling into their driveway, I parked a few houses down, suddenly uncertain. Something felt very wrong about the situation. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering my courage, when I saw Amanda's parents arriving with gift bags and flowers. They were welcomed at the door by Amanda herself, dressed elegantly and wearing a corsage. A Mother's Day celebration was clearly underway, a celebration from which I had been deliberately excluded. Rather than announcing my presence immediately, I decided to walk past the house to see if I could understand what was happening. Their living room windows faced the street with the dining room visible through a large bay window on the side. As I approached, I could see a table beautifully set for what appeared to be 8 or 9 people with flowers, candles, and a Happy Mother's Day banner hanging on the wall. The front windows were cracked open to let in the spring breeze, allowing snippets of conversation to drift out. I paused near a large rhododendron bush, out of sight, but within earshot. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but in that moment I needed to understand the magnitude of the deception. I heard laughter, the clink of glasses, and then Amanda's voice, clear and confident. "I'm so glad everyone could be here to celebrate today. Family is everything to Michael and me, and we're blessed to have such amazing parents who support us." My heart sank as I realized this was no impromptu gathering or children's playdate. This was a planned, formal Mother's Day celebration to which every mother except me had been invited. I was about to walk away when I heard my name. "Did Hope give you any trouble about the cancellation?" someone asked, possibly Amanda's sister. Amanda's laugh was cold. "No, I just sent her a text this morning. She's probably sitting at home crying into her tea." Amanda Michael's voice held a note of warning, but it was weak, uncertain. "What? It's true. She's always trying to guilt-trip us into including her in everything. As if we don't do enough by letting her visit Lily at all after the way she criticizes everything." "Still, she is my mother," Michael said quietly. "And I'm your wife and Lily's mother. Our family comes first, Michael. Your mother had her time. Now it's mine." There was an uncomfortable silence broken by Amanda's mother. "Darling, perhaps we should change the subject. It's a celebration after all." "You're right, Mom," Amanda replied, her voice brightening artificially. "Let's focus on the positive, like the fact that we're planning that European vacation we've been dreaming of." "Oh," her mother responded. "I thought you were saving for Lily's education." I heard the smirk in Amanda's voice. "We're using the extra money from Michael's mother's increased payments. She thinks it's going toward the basement renovation, but that was completed under budget. We've been putting the difference into our vacation fund." Amanda Michael's voice was sharper now. "That's not right." "Oh, please, it's not like she needs the money living in that tiny house all alone. Besides, she owes us for putting up with her neediness." The real Mother's Day gift will be when that witch finally ends up in a nursing home and stops trying to insert herself into our lives. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen, tears streaming down my face, waiting for my son to defend me, to say anything that would indicate he didn't share his wife's cruel assessment of me. But all I heard was the scrape of a chair and Michael's defeated voice. "Let's serve the main course, shall we?" In that moment, everything became crystalline clear. I wasn't just an inconvenience to Amanda, I was an enemy. And my son, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was complicit in this betrayal. I returned to my car on shaky legs, placed the carefully wrapped gifts on the passenger seat, and sat staring blankly through the windshield. The beautiful spring day continued around me, birds singing, children playing in nearby yards, neighbors working in gardens, but I felt disconnected from it all, as if viewing the world through thick glass. The drive home was a blur. I have no memory of the route I took or how long it took me to get there. I walked into my empty house, placed the gifts on my dining table, and finally allowed myself to fully feel the magnitude of what had happened. The tears came in waves interspersed with moments of stunned silence. I moved through my home like a ghost, touching photographs of Michael as a child, remembering the little boy who had once looked at me as if I hung the moon and stars. Where had that child gone? How had he become a man who would allow his mother to be denigrated and discarded? As evening fell, I sat in my darkened living room, emotionally exhausted, but unable to sleep. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but beneath it was a growing sense of clarity and resolve. For years I had accepted Amanda's mistreatment and Michael's betrayal, believing that maintaining any connection to my son and granddaughter was worth the humiliation. I had convinced myself that my financial support was an expression of love rather than what it had become, exploitation. But hearing Amanda's words, the casual cruelty, the mockery, the admission of financial deception, was like having ice water thrown in my face. I could no longer pretend that things would improve with time or that my continued sacrifices would eventually soften their hearts. As I finally crawled into bed in the early hours of Monday morning, I made a decision. The time for passive acceptance was over. I had spent my entire adult life putting my son's needs before my own, but the person he had become did not deserve that sacrifice. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would reclaim my dignity, my financial security, and my self-respect. The broken-hearted mother went to bed, but a stronger woman would wake up in her place. Monday morning dawned with uncharacteristic clarity. Despite my nearly sleepless night, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The crushing pain remained, but it had crystallized into something more defined, more actionable. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Michael had done his homework as a child. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to look unflinchingly at the complete picture of our relationship as it had evolved under Amanda's influence. I took out a notebook and began documenting every significant incident over the past 7 years since they had married. The excluded holidays, the canceled visits, the cruel comments, the restricted access to my granddaughter. Seeing it all written down in one place was shocking even to me who had lived through each moment. When I reached yesterday's betrayal, I paused. The real gift will be when that witch ends up in a nursing home. Amanda's words echoed in my mind alongside the silence from my son that had followed. The most painful realization wasn't Amanda's cruelty, it was Michael's complicity. Around 10 o'clock, I called Patricia, my closest friend since college days, who happened to be a retired family law attorney. "Hope, are you okay? You sound different," she said when she answered. "I need your advice, Pat, professionally and as my friend. Do you have time to meet today?" 2 hours later, we sat in her home office, surrounded by the law books she hadn't been able to part with despite her retirement. I recounted the entire story, including the financial arrangements I had made for Michael and Amanda's home. "I have all the paperwork here," I said, sliding a folder across her desk. "The loan agreement, payment schedules, everything." Patricia reviewed the documents carefully, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Hope, according to these records, they've missed 3 payments in the past 6 months. Did you know about this?" I hadn't. The automatic contribution from my account had continued without interruption, but their portion had become inconsistent. And this increased payment you agreed to for the basement renovation, that was 18 months ago. Yes. Amanda said they needed about $20,000 for the work. Patricia made some quick calculations. Based on the additional $300 monthly you've been contributing, you've given them nearly $6,500 toward a project they told you was already completed under budget. They're using your money for a European vacation while missing their own mortgage payments. Hearing it stated so plainly made my stomach clench. This wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was financial exploitation. What are my options, Pat? She leaned forward, her expression compassionate but resolute. Legally, you're in a strong position. The loan agreement is properly executed. You could demand immediate repayment of any missed amounts. You could terminate the additional contribution for the basement since they misrepresented its purpose. In an extreme case, you could even call the entire loan due if they're in breach of the payment terms. And what would that mean for them? For the house. Without your monthly contribution, and with the requirement to catch up on missed payments, they'd likely struggle to maintain the mortgage. If the entire loan were called due, and they couldn't refinance through a bank, they might have to sell the house. I sat back absorbing this information. The thought of causing such disruption to my granddaughter's life was painful. But continuing to be exploited, while being treated with contempt, seemed untenable. I need time to think, I told Patricia. This isn't just about money. Of course it isn't, she agreed. It's about respect and honesty. But remember that you're not responsible for the consequences of their actions. They made choices knowing the potential outcomes. When I returned home, there was a voicemail from Michael. I steeled myself before listening to it. Hey Mom, it's me. Look, I'm sorry about yesterday. Amanda had already invited Lily's friend before I mentioned dinner to you, and it got complicated. We should have handled it better. Anyway, happy Mother's Day. I'll try to stop by with your card this week. No acknowledgement of the cruel words I'd overheard. No real apology for the exclusion or deception. Just a flimsy excuse and vague promises. It was as if he were apologizing for a minor scheduling conflict rather than a deliberate and hurtful betrayal. I didn't return the call. Instead, I spent the afternoon reviewing my financial situation. At 68, I needed to ensure my own security. The money I was giving Michael and Amanda each month, combined with the missed payments on their end, was significantly impacting my retirement savings. Over dinner, I reflected on the patterns that had developed. For years, I had enabled their behavior by accepting the excuses, tolerating the disrespect, and continuing financial support despite the emotional withdrawal. I had taught them that they could treat me poorly without consequences, all while benefiting from my generosity. Perhaps the most difficult realization was that my compliance hadn't improved our relationship. Each concession on my part had only led to further demands and deeper exclusion. My desperate attempt to maintain a connection by being unfailingly generous and forgiving had backfired completely. By bedtime, my path was clear. This wasn't about revenge. It was about establishing healthy boundaries and demanding basic respect. I would no longer fund my own mistreatment or allow financial manipulation to continue. I would act with dignity and clarity, motivated not by anger but by self-preservation and self-respect. I slept soundly for the first time in months, with a plan forming in my mind. Morning would bring action, not just contemplation. I would reclaim my power in this relationship, whatever the consequences might be. It was time to show both Michael and Amanda that my love did not equal limitless tolerance for abuse. The frightened, heartbroken woman who had wept through Mother's Day night was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that true love sometimes requires difficult choices. I would always love my son and granddaughter, but I would no longer sacrifice my dignity and financial security to maintain a relationship built on exploitation and disrespect. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a strange sense of peace. Tomorrow would change everything, but change was long overdue. Tuesday morning, I woke before my alarm, a sense of resolve carrying me through my morning routine with unusual efficiency. By 8:30, I was dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue pantsuit I usually reserved for important meetings. Today qualified as perhaps the most important meeting of my recent life. My first stop was my bank. I had been a customer there for over 30 years, and the branch manager Robert knew me well. He greeted me warmly as I entered his office. "Hope, wonderful to see you. What brings you in today?" "I need to make some changes to my automatic payments, Robert. Specifically, I need to stop the monthly transfer to my son's account." If he was surprised, he didn't show it. "Of course. Let me pull up your information." Within 15 minutes, the recurring payment was canceled. The money that would have transferred to Michael and Amanda's account the following week would remain in my savings. It was a small action that took only moments to complete, but it felt monumental. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Robert asked. "Yes, actually. I need information about a loan I made to my son and daughter-in-law for their home purchase. I'd like to understand my options if they've defaulted on repayment." Robert referred me to the bank's loan specialist, who reviewed my documentation and confirmed what Patricia had already told me. The missed payments constituted a breach of our agreement, and I had every right to demand immediate repayment of those amounts, or potentially the entire loan. "Would you like us to send a formal notice on your behalf?" the specialist asked. "Not yet. I'll speak with them first, but I may be back." My next stop was the mortgage company that held the primary loan on Michael and Amanda's house. I had no legal relationship with this company, as my loan to them was separate, but I wanted to understand how my actions might affect their overall financial situation. The mortgage representative couldn't share specific details about their account, but did provide general information about their policies regarding missed payments and default procedures. What I learned confirmed that, without my contribution, Michael and Amanda would likely struggle to maintain their mortgage payments, especially if they were already behind. On the drive home, I received a text from Michael. "Mom, did you get my message? Let me know when we can drop by with your Mother's Day card." I didn't respond. This conversation needed to happen in person, and I would initiate it on my terms. That afternoon, I consulted with Patricia again, this time bringing her a formal letter I had drafted to Michael and Amanda. The letter outlined the breach of our loan agreement, documented the missed payments, and detailed the misrepresentation regarding the basement renovation funds. It stated that I was immediately terminating the additional monthly contribution and required repayment of missed amounts within 30 days. "This is straightforward and legally sound," Patricia confirmed after reviewing it. "Are you prepared for their reaction?" "I think so," I replied, though my racing heart suggested otherwise. "Would you like me to be present when you deliver this?" I considered her offer carefully. Having Patricia there would provide emotional support and legal backup, but this was ultimately a family matter. "No, but thank you. This is something I need to do myself." Wednesday morning, I called Michael and asked him to meet me at his house that afternoon at 2. I specified that both he and Amanda needed to be present. "Is everything okay, Mom? You sound serious." "We need to discuss some important matters. I'll explain when I get there." I arrived precisely at 2, the envelope containing the letter in my handbag, along with copies of all relevant financial documents. Michael opened the door, his expression a mixture of concern and wariness. "Mom, what's going on?" "Amanda had to rearrange a work meeting to be here." "I won't take much of her valuable time," I replied, evenly following him into the living room, where Amanda sat arms crossed on the sofa. Hope she nodded curtly. Michael said, "You insisted on seeing both of us. Is this about Mother's Day? Because we already apologized for the miscommunication." "This isn't about Mother's Day specifically," I began, remaining standing despite Michael's gesture toward an armchair. "It's about our entire relationship, including our financial arrangements." I removed the envelope from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. This letter outlined several serious concerns. First, you've missed 3 mortgage payments in the past 6 months, despite my continued contribution. Second, you misrepresented the purpose of the additional funds I've been providing for the basement renovation, which I'm told was completed under budget, while you diverted my money to vacation planning. Amanda's face flushed red. "You were spying on us. How dare you?" "I overheard your conversation on Mother's Day when I came to deliver gifts after receiving your last-minute cancellation text. I heard everything, Amanda. including your comment about the witch ending up in a nursing home. Michael paled visibly. Mom, I can explain. There's no explanation needed. The facts speak for themselves. As outlined in the letter, I've terminated the additional monthly contribution, effective immediately. I require repayment of the missed amounts within 30 days. If you fail to comply, I'll be forced to consider more serious measures, including potentially calling the entire loan due. Amanda leapt to her feet. You can't do that. We have a contract. Yes, we do. A contract you've broken repeatedly. I suggest you read the letter carefully, including the section detailing breach of agreement. Michael picked up the envelope with a shaking hand. Mom, please, we can work this out. Things have been tight financially lately, but we'll catch up on the payments. And the basement renovation funds. The European vacation you're planning with money that was meant for your home. He couldn't meet my eyes. It was Amanda's idea, but I shouldn't have agreed to it. We can return that money. Yes, you can. All terms are outlined in the letter. My attorney has reviewed everything to ensure it's legally sound. Attorney Michael looked stunned. You got a lawyer involved in a family matter. This stopped being merely a family matter when you began exploiting me financially while excluding me from your lives. I'm not just your mother, Michael. I'm an individual with rights, including the right to protect my financial interests and to be treated with basic respect. Amanda's shock had quickly transformed to fury. This is ridiculous. After everything we've done letting you visit Lily, including you in family events when we could, you should be grateful for whatever relationship we allow you to have. I turned to her calmly. That's exactly the problem, Amanda. You believe that allowing me a relationship with my son and granddaughter is a favor rather than a natural family bond. You've systematically isolated Michael from me, while continuing to benefit from my financial support. That ends today. I moved toward the door, then paused. I've always loved you, Michael, and I always will. But love without respect isn't healthy for either of us. I hope you'll reflect on how we reached this point and what kind of man you want to be, your son or Amanda's puppet. As I walked to my car, Michael followed me out. Mom, wait. This is extreme. Can't we discuss this? We just did. The time for discussion was years ago when this pattern first began. I tried many times to talk with you about how I was being treated, but you dismissed my concerns. Now you can deal with the consequences. The following days brought a barrage of angry messages from Amanda and increasingly desperate calls from Michael. Amanda's attacks ranged from character assassination to threats. You'll never see Lily again if you go through with this, one voicemail declared. Everyone will know what a vindictive old woman you are, stated another. I didn't respond to Amanda's messages, but I did answer one call from Michael. The letter outlines exactly what needs to happen, I told him calmly. This isn't negotiable. But Mom, we can't come up with that much money in 30 days, and without your monthly contribution we'll fall behind on the main mortgage too. Those are the consequences of your choices, Michael. You chose to miss payments while planning vacations with my money. You chose to allow Amanda to treat me with contempt. You chose to exclude me from your lives while taking advantage of my financial support. What about Lily? Do you want her to lose her home? It was a low blow, using my granddaughter as emotional leverage. Don't put that on me, Michael. You and Amanda are Lily's parents. It's your responsibility to provide her with a stable home. If you can't manage the house without exploiting me, perhaps you should consider downsizing to something within your means. As the 30-day deadline approached, Amanda escalated her attacks. She created social media posts, vaguely referencing toxic family members and elder selfishness. She contacted extended family members with a distorted version of events, portraying herself as the victim of my unreasonable demands. To my surprise, many family members reached out to me directly to hear my side. My nephew, who had initially alerted me to Amanda's lies, was particularly supportive. We've all seen how they've treated you, Aunt Hope. Nobody believes Amanda's version of events. The deadline passed without repayment of the missed amounts. As promised, I instructed Patricia to begin proceedings to call the entire loan due. Michael made a last-ditch effort to negotiate, offering partial repayment and promises of better treatment going forward. It's too late for promises, I told him. Your actions over the past 7 years speak louder than any words you can offer now. 2 months after that fateful Mother's Day, Michael and Amanda were forced to put their house on the market. The real estate market had cooled, and they couldn't get the price they wanted. After 3 months of declining offers, they finally accepted one that barely covered the primary mortgage and my loan. During this time, Amanda's facade finally cracked. In a heated confrontation at Patricia's office where we were finalizing paperwork, she broke down. Fine, you win. Hope, are you happy now? You've destroyed our lives because your feelings were hurt. No, Amanda. You and Michael destroyed your own financial stability through dishonesty and poor choices. All I did was stop enabling it. Michael, who had remained silent throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke up. She's right, Amanda. Mom gave us every opportunity to make this work. We're the ones who took advantage of her generosity while pushing her away. It was the first time in years I'd heard my son take responsibility or stand up to his wife. In that moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd raised, the man who understood right from wrong and had the courage to acknowledge his mistakes. As they left the office, Michael turned back. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I understand what we did wrong. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start, a small crack in the wall that had been built between us. And for now, that was enough. 6 months after Michael and Amanda sold their house, I sat in my garden enjoying the late afternoon sunshine. So much had changed since that devastating Mother's Day, both externally in our family dynamics and internally in my own heart and mind. Michael, Amanda, and Lily had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. The transition had been difficult for all of them, especially Lily, who was now 5 and didn't understand why they had to leave the only home she'd known. Amanda had been forced to sell many of her designer furnishings and luxury items to help cover their expenses. Michael had taken on additional architectural projects to rebuild their savings. Our relationship remained complicated, but it was evolving into something new, something healthier for all of us. The first family gathering after the house sale had been painfully awkward, a Thanksgiving dinner at my brother's home where Amanda sat silently, barely acknowledging my presence. Michael had made stilted attempts at conversation, clearly torn between his wife's lingering resentment and his desire to repair our relationship. Lily, innocent of the adult conflicts, had been my salvation that day. She'd approached me cautiously at first, encouraged by her father. Grandma Hope, Daddy says you know how to make paper birds that really fly. Can you show me? It was such a small thing teaching my granddaughter to fold an origami crane, but it opened a door that had long been closed to me. Amanda watched from across the room, her expression unreadable, but she didn't interfere. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my own life, while allowing space for Michael to determine what role he wanted me to play in his. I joined a community gardening club, reconnected with old friends. I'd neglected during years of fruitless attempts to please Amanda, and even started taking photography classes, something I'd always wanted to explore. Patricia, my attorney friend, encouraged me to volunteer at a senior center where I discovered many older adults experiencing family estrangement similar to mine. Sharing our stories provided perspective and healing. I eventually began facilitating a support group, helping others establish healthy boundaries with adult children while managing the emotional toll of family conflict. 3 months after the move, Michael called and asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. It was the first time he'd initiated contact without Amanda's knowledge. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said, stirring his coffee nervously, about how things got so bad between us and my part in it. I appreciate that, Michael. I've done a lot of reflecting too. I let Amanda control everything, our finances, our family relationships, even my relationship with you. I was so afraid of rocking the boat that I became someone I don't recognize or respect. The thing is, Mom, I was angry with you too. This surprised me. Angry about what? You were always so strong, so capable. Growing up, I saw how you handled everything on your own, never asking for help. I think I married someone equally strong, but in a different way. I wanted someone to take charge the way you always did, but Amanda's strength turned into control, and I didn't know how to stand up to it. It was a perspective I'd never considered, that my independence as a single mother had somehow influenced my son's choice of partner and his willingness to surrender his autonomy. I'm sorry if my example made it harder for you to find your own strength, Michael. That was never my intention. I know that, and I'm not blaming you for my choices. I'm just trying to understand how I became so passive that I could stand by while someone treated my mother so terribly. That conversation became the first of many. Over weekly coffee meetings, we began rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. Michael spoke about his marriage counseling with Amanda, a condition he'd finally insisted on after the financial collapse forced them to re-examine their relationship. She had a terrible relationship with her own mother, he explained during one of our talks. Her mother constantly criticized and undermined her. I think in some twisted way Amanda saw you as a threat, someone who might judge her parenting the way her mother always did. I never judged her parenting, Michael. I just wanted to be part of Lily's life. I know that now. And I think deep down Amanda knows it too. She's working through a lot in therapy. Gradually, Michael began bringing Lily for visits without Amanda. At first, these were brief supervised interactions, but as trust slowly rebuilt, the visits extended. I finally got to read books to my granddaughter, bake cookies together, and hear about her days at kindergarten. One rainy Saturday, about 5 months after they'd moved, Michael dropped Lily off for a morning visit while he attended a work meeting. It was the first time I'd been alone with my granddaughter in years. "Grandma, why didn't I see you much when I was little?" Lily asked as we colored together at my kitchen table. My heart ached at the innocent question. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings that make it hard for families to spend time together. But what matters is that we're together now. "Mommy said you were too busy before. But now you have time for me." I bit back my initial response, knowing that correcting Amanda's narrative wouldn't help Lily. "I always wanted to spend time with you, sweetheart, and I'm very happy we get to be together more now." When Michael returned to pick her up, he mentioned that Amanda had asked if I would be willing to have dinner at their apartment the following weekend. It would be the first time she had voluntarily included me in anything since the financial fallout. The dinner was tense, but civil. Amanda wasn't warm, but she was respectful, making an effort to include me in conversation and allowing me to help Lily with her bedtime routine afterward. As I was leaving, she said something that suggested a small but significant shift. "Michael tells me you're running a support group for grandparents. That's good work." It wasn't an apology or a declaration of affection, but it was acknowledgement, and that was a start. Over time, our family found a new equilibrium. The relationship would never be what I had initially hoped for when Michael first introduced me to Amanda, but it was no longer the toxic, exploitative dynamic that had caused so much pain. Amanda maintained a certain emotional distance, but she had developed a grudging respect for the boundaries I had established. When she occasionally slipped into old patterns of exclusion or control, Michael now spoke up, asserting himself in ways he never had before. The financial lessons had been painful, but necessary. Michael and Amanda lived within their means, now slowly rebuilding their credit and savings. They had plans to purchase a smaller home eventually, with a conventional mortgage and without my financial involvement. As for me, the experience transformed my understanding of love, family, and self-respect. I learned that true love sometimes requires the courage to allow others to face the consequences of their actions. I discovered that my identity wasn't solely defined by being Michael's mother or Lily's grandmother. I was a complete person with my own needs, boundaries, and dignity. My volunteer work evolved into a part-time position as a family counselor at the senior center, where I drew on my own experience to help others navigate complex family dynamics. There was something healing about transforming my pain into wisdom that could help others. The most unexpected gift from this difficult journey was my newfound sense of freedom. For years I had lived in fear of losing my connection to my son and granddaughter, allowing that fear to trap me in an abusive dynamic. When I finally faced that fear and took action despite it, I discovered a strength and resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Sitting in my garden that afternoon watching butterflies visit the flowers I had planted, I felt a deep sense of peace. The path had been painful, but it had led me to a healthier place, not just in my relationship with Michael and his family, but in my relationship with myself. The broken-hearted woman who had wept through that Mother's Day night was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and more complete. A woman who understood that sometimes standing up for yourself is the greatest act of love you can perform both for yourself and for those who need to learn about respect and consequences. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that ultimately transformed a toxic relationship in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most profound healing. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and write a new chapter in your story.